Unsolved Mysteries Rewind is a commercial-free podcast that focuses on cases featured on the television show Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. Each episode features a single case and, if possible, updates and an expansion on the original story. Listener discretion is advised for listeners who are sensitive to true crime details.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries Rewind, two friends get together to discuss episodes of their favorite television show, Unsolved Mysteries. Will they find answers? Will anyone care? You may be able to solve a mystery.
Hello, this is Mark, and you're listening to Unsolved Mysteries Rewind. I'm on today with Catharine. How are you doing, Catharine?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great. Today we're discussing a story that you told me that you're very passionate about. This is one that really resonates with you. Could you talk a little bit about the case that we're doing and maybe why it resonates with you so much?
So, Unsolved Mysteries gave it the title of the Sean Don Khan.
Terrible name.
It doesn't pay tribute to Tracy at all. So
it also doesn't let me know about anything about the case before getting into it.
If I saw this title, I would think it's a fraud case. Anywho, so we are discussing the murder of Tracy Lynn Kirkpatrick. She was murdered on March 15th, 1989 in Frederick, Maryland.
According to Amazon, you dug up that this aired on January 1st, 1991. It's one of those kind of weird things. We don't know any of the dates. The dates are, I don't know what's going on with Unsolved Mysteries. They don't know when things aired. Somebody needs to sit there, right?
Well,
and just log it.
The Amazon episodes, I think, are a regrouping of all of the segments. So some of them may be accurate, some are not, because the segments in that episode didn't even originally air together.
In the reenactment, we learn that it's Tracy Kirkpatrick, I believe, was 17. It was her senior year in high school. She was an honor student. I learned that she was interested in becoming a model even. And she worked for Eileen's Ladies Sportswear in the Westridge shopping mall, which was more of a strip mall than a real mall.
Right. Yeah, and we can post a picture of it on the Facebook page too.
In the reenactment, we have a couple things that I don't know, just didn't really work for me so well. We have Tracy Kirkpatrick we learned that she's a big fan of poetry, and she doesn't, but someone does a reading of a poem that she had read to her family before her, I almost said disappearance, before her murder, by Christina Rossetti, I enjoy the poetry of Rossetti. I found the reading of it with the reverb and echo to be a little bit goofy.
I think it was a little bit of a try hard on Unsolved Mysteries.
And whoever did the reading, I just felt like it wasn't very good. So
I would like to say before we start, Unsolved Mysteries spent about 10% of the segment covering her murder and 90% of not her murder. So that's kind of why I was passionate about it, and I wanted to find more information because I was left very curious of the murder, which we will get into.
She's working at Eileen's Ladies Sportswear, and she is, on the evening of March 15th, 1989, she's closing the store alone for the very first time.
Which I have a big problem with. I've worked in restaurants since I was 15 years old, and I was never left alone.
But have you ever worked in retail like that, like in a store?
No.
I have. And for the most part, I'm going to say 75% of the time, you're with somebody, because you want somebody to, but I definitely, maybe 25% of the time, I was there alone. And I was even in a store once where somebody came and shoplifted, and I tried to stop them. The guy took a swing at me, and I just thought, I don't get paid nearly enough to really care about this.
In the morning, working in a restaurant in the morning before we open, I would be prepping food, and then the manager would go to the bank, and I'd be left alone in the store for maybe half an hour tops. And I would make them lock up the whole store. All the doors are locked. I wouldn't let anybody in because it creeped me out to be there by myself. I didn't like it. And a few times customers would try and come in and order before we were open. And I would say, no, I'm not letting you in the store. We're not open. I'm here by myself.
I don't blame you at all. You don't know if somebody's going to come in from the last night because their wife was seen with somebody and they want to get the receipt, that was used for that meal. And, no,
exactly.
There could be any type of thing. And you know what? If somebody needs to get in there while you're there alone, they can wait 20 minutes.
Right. Or they could call. I'll talk to them on the phone, but I'm not letting them in the store when I'm there by myself.
Which is why you're here today. The evening of March 15th, which happens to be the Ides of March, of course, she's alone for the very first time closing this small retail store. I've never heard of Eileen's. It sounds like it might be a small chain. Diane, her mother, brings her food at 6 p.m. We learn that. 8 p.m., the manager leaves for the night. We don't get much information on the manager. I couldn't find much about him. I don't know if you did. I don't think you did.
I didn't. I'm surprised the manager wasn't interviewed in the segment.
Technically, this is the last person to really have any interaction with her. So it's kind of a red flag to me to at least make sure it's all on the up and up. According to the sales log, there are no sales between 8 p.m. and closing, which technically just makes the manager even more of somebody to question.
Right.
Around 8:45, according to Unsolved Mysteries, 15 minutes before closing time, Tracy was alone. This is mostly due because of the security guard's testimony. With the security guard's information, you found some great stuff to talk about the security guard. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But I'm sure how that can really be verified. That's all just hearsay. It's him saying it.
I think the manager leaving at 8 is a little bit easier to verify with time cards. And then if the manager got home at a certain time, whoever he got home to could give him an alibi.
Right, anything like gas receipt.
Do we even know if the manager is male or female?
They're just referred to, at least from what I found, as the manager.
Okay, so it could even be a woman.
Yeah, I would imagine, it's just hard to say. Again, we don't have any information on the manager, unfortunately. If somebody's listening and they do know about the manager, please let us know. We can always do an update. Around 9 p.m., around the time of 9 p.m., the shopping center security guard said that he passed the store sometime after 9 and saw that the lights were on. But he assumed Tracy was counting up the day's receipts and finishing her shift. He seems to be really invested in the idea of this one store. One thing I also could not find are what stores were surrounding it. Were there other stores that closed at 9 o'clock?
That's a good point.
I couldn't find the history of the stores that were there.
From my research, it said the layout of the mall is the same, but the stores are totally different. Ladies Sportswear closed a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, if you just search for Eileen's Ladies Sportswear, this is the first hit, this case.
Okay, that's interesting. But what I did find is that it's a small strip mall. You could go from one end to the other 5 times in 20 minutes.
It's like a supermarket, but not. It almost feels like if you've ever visited like an outlet mall.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of felt like.
A point somebody made on Unsolved.com is that the security guard, who was not named in the Unsolved Mysteries segment, could go there and back multiple times within an hour. So why is he saying he checked on the store and an hour and 45 minutes later, as he passed by again, the lights were still on? Mm-hmm. What was he doing in that hour and a half?
Well, do you want to talk about what happened? Because here we are an hour and 45 minutes after closing. And if you want to just kind of go over, this is where things get hair-raising.
So at 10:45, the security guard, who was not named in the Unsolved Mysteries segment, notices that the lights are still on. So he goes to investigate and finds Tracy's dead body in the storage room. She had 7 stab wounds to her chest and back.
7. From what I understand, it's a slow way to die and a very painful way to die.
There was no sign of a struggle, and they believe Tracy knew her killer. She was not sexually assaulted, thank God. I wouldn't want to be murdered, but...
Right, at least she didn't have to go through this trauma of being raped before she's murdered. It's
exactly.
None of it's good. At the very least, she wasn't tortured.
There was no evidence to see that robbery was a motive because the cash register was untouched and there was still money in it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at the same time, Tracy's parents, Diane and Billy, started to get worried because Tracy should have been home an hour ago. They drove to the store thinking her car broke down because she had been having car trouble.
The reenactors seemed kind of complaining, like grumpy. I just felt like I just felt like they were a comedy team or something. It was just the way they were just going at each other. It just seemed kind of strange. During this time, we also get to meet the real parents. While this is all going on.
I would like to pay homage to Diane's hairdo, which you said something about also.
Yes. I think my note specifically just says mom's hair.
Smiley face. The parents thought that the store could have been robbed, but they couldn't imagine what really happened. When the parents arrive, police and detectives are there, and mom zoned out when the police informed her that she's not okay.
Remember, she goes, "Is she okay?"
And the mom just kept saying, "Is she okay? Can I see her?"
And it's like, no.
And they said no.
This isn't. So she just sat down and said she just doesn't even remember what was next. And she was in shock, of course. She was just told by police that her child is not okay. The worst thing for a parent to hear. Nothing happens. Like, we don't have very much information from this point. At this point, we may as well just end the episode if nothing else had come out. But 3 months later, 90 days later, right? Not exactly 90, but 3 months later, a call to a confession hotline. And I'm still trying to figure out what a confession hotline is. Do you think it's like with these TV shows where it's like, if you have information, dial this number?
The people I've talked to about this case say the same thing. They're like, what is a confession hotline? I think it was like a thing in the 90s because there's another podcast called The Apology Line. And that talks about a guy who set up a voicemail in his apartment and just had people call his voicemail and confess. And
Get out of here. I need to hear that.
He would air the apologies. And it was anywhere from like, "I'm sorry, I didn't call you back," to "I hate gay people and I murder gay people." And that's like the big focus of the podcast as to how dark this seemingly innocent thing got to be.
I guess it's a thing. That's interesting to me. And I would imagine that 90% of the calls are from 12-year-olds saying the most outlandish and ridiculous things, because that's what I would be doing at 12. But this one particular hotline received a call from quote unquote Don, and he seemed to confess to Tracy's murder. They don't say Tracy's name, though. The call was placed from a payphone in a Safeway supermarket in Walkersville. By the way, that particular Safeway is still there. They left a message claiming to be the killer. Do you want to talk about why the name Don is so significant to the people involved?
I would love to. Drum roll, please.
By the way, should I just play the recording? I should play the recording right now, right?
Hello. My name is Don, and I'm calling from Frederick, Maryland. I know this is going to sound surprising, but 3 months ago, I stabbed a girl to death. And you might think that in making this tape, I'm setting myself up to be caught. But there are a lot of guys named Don in Frederick. The girl I killed was working in a ladies' sportswear store. I often came by and talked to her when she was working alone. And one night when she was in the storeroom and we were talking, our conversation turned into an argument. And so I took out a knife that I have with me at all times and I killed her. And a few days later I realized that I had created a lot of sadness. And I thought about turning myself into the police. But whatever they do to me, that won't bring Tracy back. So I decided that I better keep free because we have the death penalty in Maryland. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry about what I did, but nothing can change it. Bye.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And
that was really creepy. That was creepier than I remember it being.
If there's a better copy out there that you run across, or if somebody's listening and they know of a copy that isn't so overly produced, please let us know. And I'd love to replace that with just the copy without the music in the background. But yeah, I mean, it's creepy on its own.
So the security guard that found Tracy's body was named Don Barnes Jr., and he is the son of Don Barnes Sr., the sheriff of Frederick County.
So all of a sudden we're getting a little bit of a conspiracy. It seems to be anyway, or a hypothetical situation. Somebody can make a phone call to someone, make something easier. I mean,
Yes.
it's how many times have you read about cases of the police person's child getting into trouble and them getting off scot-free? Maybe not happens all the time, but it certainly does happen.
Even after this phone call, Unsolved Mysteries never came back to the security guard. They spent a minute discussing the murder, and the security guard found her, and they spent the rest of the segment talking about this phone call and the psychic, which we'll get into in a second, and never
Not
connected.
once did they say his name.
Never said the security guard was a possible suspect. Never got into it.
I think
And
that's a glaring omission of fact.
I couldn't agree more.
What does CPL mean? Does that mean corporal?
I think so.
But he's a detective. I'm going to refer to him as detective, if that's okay. Detective Barry Horner from the Frederick, Maryland police states, the sincerity that I had heard in the voice and the knowledge that the person was displaying, talking about what he had done at that point, convinced me that I was probably listening to the killer. This is somebody whose profession it is to find the person who's guilty. And he's just flat out, even though this person does, he only really describes the crime. He doesn't mention names. It's just, it's too coincidental. There's too many things that line up. We go on, they trace the call back to the supermarket in Walkersville, Maryland. That's about 7 or 8 miles from where the crime took place. Nothing happens. There's not much they could really trace. It's not like you can pull fingerprints from a payphone.
Right. But they did decide to make a plea to the person who made the phone call. As Detective Horner said, it was a decision made by my chief of police and members of my division to compose a letter to this individual and address it to Don and ask Don to please come forward if he needed someone to talk to. It's available.
And this was published in October 10th, 1989 in the Frederick Post. But there was no response to the article. I'm sure a lot of people read about it. I'm sure a lot of people learned that the case was not only active, but it was this heinous crime. Really, there's nothing that happened until 2 weeks later, where we get to meet Martha Woodworth, who is
a psychic.
She's a psychic. She's still active. Martha Woodworth has a Twitter and a website, bestpsychicforme.com. She's on Facebook, and she has a YouTube channel. She's really out there doing a lot of stuff. She finds that one particular person named Sean reached out to her, and he seems obsessed with finding the murderer of Tracy. Martha Woodward would go on to say in the interview from Unsolved Mysteries, and when I received the envelope with his handwriting on the outside, I thought this person has a much stronger involvement than just being a friend who's interested. I found the handwriting extremely disturbed, so I felt it was my responsibility to alert the police that I had a potential suspect for them. Good on Martha for seeing that there could be a correlation between this Sean person and the murderer. People do get obsessed. We see it all the time. People get obsessed with cases. I don't know if that necessarily means that they are involved in it. Do you think she made the right decision?
I think she did. About 5 years ago, a girl in my hometown went missing, and I live in a small town where nobody goes missing. And
was she your age?
She was my sister's age, so a couple years older than me. And a lot of people were obsessed with the case because nothing like that ever happens in my hometown. So I don't know. Maybe the man that called her was just a next level obsessed. And
at $12.99 a minute, getting
right.
some information about Tracy. I am a believer of psychics. I've spoken about it in previous episodes about my belief of the esoteric. I don't know if a psychic that charges by the minute or hour or at all is really great. But I'm not going to make fun of her because everybody has to pay bills. So I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole. But at the same time, the name Sean means a lot to this case. Do you want to talk about why?
The police did play the recorded confession for her, and she said that's him, that's 100% the man that called me asking for information. So police traced Sean back to a young man in Walkersville, the same town where the phone call was made. But his name is neither Sean nor Don. But at least 3 people had named him as the voice that matched the confession.
Sean is also the name of the roommate of Don Barnes Jr.
Yes.
So that's weird.
we had to do some digging to find that out.
We have a name, Don Barnes Jr., right?
Mm-hmm.
For all intents and purposes, he's innocent, right? I mean, we're not saying he's guilty. I'm just saying it looks weird. He was not in the Unsolved Mysteries research. We kind of dug him up. We found him, and then we found that his roommate is named Sean.
Right.
A lot of people made this connection. We kept digging deeper and deeper until our fingers bled.
Let me backtrack one step. Sean was never arrested. The police searched his house and questioned him. They could not find any evidence that he was at the crime scene or committed the crime, and he has since been cleared. No one has been arrested as of yet, and the case is still active on Frederick Police Department's open investigation list.
One connection that I could not find was this the same roommate that Don had? I mean, it's a hard, probably the most difficult thing is to make that connection. Like, was this the same guy? Because we don't have a last name.
Right.
We don't have very much to go on. Maybe it'll kind of come out in the future.
Opens a lot of theories. One thing I couldn't find, too, was a picture of Don Barnes Jr. I really wanted to find a picture of him.
I even looked up where he went to high school and tried to find yearbooks. He's been scrubbed. Definitely, the guy has a very strange existence because not long after the murder, do you want to talk about what Barnes ended up doing?
Shortly after the murder, Don Barnes Jr. moved to Egypt. Now he lives in Florida.
Well, I just think that's weird.
He got the hell out of Dodge after the murder.
To move out of the country, it's not illegal, but it certainly does not have the best optics. Security guard salary, a trip to Egypt is not exactly something that usually correlates.
I think in today's money, he would have made $15 an hour, maybe.
At best. But we do know that there's a lot of strangeness about this entire case. You dug up quite a bit of stuff throughout the internet.
So that does lead us to a lot of theories. I have one theory of my own. There's a lot of good comments on unsolved.com.
By Thomas.
Thomas, yes. Shout out to Thomas.
But Thomas doesn't come back to, he kind of created a discussion and then walked away. He didn't kind of come back as far as
he does. He didn't. A lot of people asked Thomas, well, what about this? And he didn't respond to any of the other comments.
But one of the most eye-opening things that you pointed out, I don't know if you're going to bring up the daughter comment.
So, according to Thomas, at a later date, it was revealed by the daughter of Don Barnes Jr. that she believed he killed her based off of conversations she heard him having while growing up. She also said that during his unaccounted for hour-and-a-half time lapse that he went to his wife's house, whom he was separated from, to change into a new uniform, which would explain why there was no blood on his clothes. She also said Barnes was 25 at the time and was into younger women. The daughter has said that Don Barnes Jr. was abusive. I'm not sure if we covered that in Thomas's comments.
I mean, this could totally be a scenario where he comes into the store while she's closing up and she's resisting his advances. The next thing you know, one thing leads to another. And I'm not saying he tried to rape her. I'm not saying whatever. What I'm saying is that we have a young girl who's been stabbed to death 7 times. We have the son of a police officer who's the security guard, who's pretty much the only person who might have had access. And he cannot truly account for the time that he was missing. He absolutely would have a new uniform at home to go and change into. We don't have a bloody uniform. We don't have evidence to support that. It's all hearsay. But what I'm saying is to just let this guy be cleared is shocking to me, because this guy does completely seem to me to be involved on some level. He must have seen something, but we just don't know.
I want to discuss a comment on Reddit, and then I want you to mention the 1994. So a commenter on Reddit said their dad was a local cop at the time, and it was common knowledge that the security guard did it, but there was nothing they could do about it, because his dad was the sheriff.
So retired Frederick police officer Bob Servasek, I think I might be butchering that, he's convinced that he knows who killed Kirkpatrick. And his quote is, "The case was solved in 1994 as far as I'm concerned. What derailed the process was politics and personal agendas. Personal individuals did not do their jobs and derailed the case." So this guy...
Again, not naming names.
He doesn't name names. He believes that an unnamed friend of Tracy killed her. So it's easy to come up with, well, this guy might have done it. Well, where was he? Where is that story? You know, we can't just we can't just assume that an imaginary friend exists.
Sir Vasek, did he make that comment on Unsolved Mysteries, or did you dig that one up?
I dig that one up. That was in an article in the Frederick News Post, and he made that comment not that long ago, believe it or not. That was actually June 1st, 2020. The name of the article is He Lived It, He Breathed It.
So again, Unsolved Mysteries is not naming any potential suspects. They're just talking about this phone call and this psychic.
In this one guy's comment, in Bob's comment, he says there's an unnamed friend who might have killed her, right? And he's saying that there's a conspiracy to cover it up because people didn't do their jobs. Name names. I mean, this can be fixed.
Exactly.
I think that it's eye-opening that he's not naming names.
He's probably retired by now. He doesn't have to worry about getting fired.
So do you think that this is truly just something that was covered up or bungled?
I think it's a combination of a cover-up and a botched investigation.
Now, there is a film being made called Into the Silent Land, and I reached out to the producers of the film, and I didn't hear back. Nonetheless, they're looking at doing a feature. Go into thesilentland.com. I'll give them a little plug. It looks like a high-quality production to discuss the unsolved murder of Tracy Kirkpatrick. Her name is difficult to say quickly for me. Tracy Kirkpatrick.
I agree. I had some trouble too. Let's end with a couple theories. Some commenters online believe that the I-70 killer was involved. I don't think that's true because
I don't see any real connection.
The I-70 killer was closer to the mid-90s, I think like 92.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy was killed in 89, and she was in Maryland. A lot of the I-70 killer was mostly in Ohio, closer to the Midwest. My theory that I developed thanks to Thomas was that Don Barnes Jr. killed Tracy, went home to change his clothes, ran into his roommate, and the roommate helped him clean up. The roommate feels guilty, tried to implicate Don, but is afraid to come forward for fear of prosecution.
Yeah, I think that it might be a solid theory. We're not saying that's exactly what happened. We're saying that's what could have happened. Somebody killed her. Somebody killed her because we have a dead girl. And it's unsolved, and it's a tragic case.
And I think the murderer is closer to the case than we think, or that closer to the case that Unsolved Mysteries leads on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about this and the amount of research you put into it.
I'm so glad I finally got to talk about this case.
Yeah, me too. I think we've done it justice. We just feel so bad for the family of Tracy.
Too. When before I was on the podcast, when I was just a fan, I actually reached out to Kim and asked her to cover this case, and she said she'd put it on her list. I am so glad that I got to come on and
That's awesome.
Cover this case.
I'm glad. I think we definitely did it justice. If anybody has any other information, you can always reach out to us, stillunsolved.com, or we're on Facebook. You can find us, Unsolved Mysteries Rewind, a little group of wacky people. And Catherine, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Tonight we have been confronted with an entire catalog of unexplained and unsolved events. Tune in next time as Unsolved Mysteries Rewind discusses another collection of unsolved mysteries. Until then, we can only look and wonder.